Right now, there's a lot of attention on public health issues tied to the coronavirus. It's a legitimate concern. It's spreading wildly, and it's got many people very concerned about their personal risk and what they can do to minimize it. And you're getting the standard advice all the time about, gee, washing your hands and possibly avoiding crowds, and depending on where you live, actually being quarantined. This is really an alarming situation going on. There's one thing though that hopefully you've been doing already that can really help reduce your risk of possibly getting the condition and more likely getting serious consequences from it. It's by not smoking. And this isn't being discussed much. I haven't seen it discussed much at all. It was known from pretty early on. And we're talking early on, we're talking about weeks now, because this is a relatively new phenomenon that's happening now. We knew pretty much early on that men seem to be getting it more than women. And it's been hypothesized that the reason, and this was mostly data out of China, because China is where we have the most history with this now. Again, history being weeks. Men smoke a lot more than women in China. It's close to half the Chinese male population are smokers. It's a little over 48%, while the women smoking rates in China are below 2%. So there's a huge discrepancy. And they saw that men were getting it more frequently. There's a theory out there, and again, it's not confirmed at this point, that smoking might be that variable, that men were more susceptible. But what isn't is thought so much as a theory anymore, which they really feel like they have a more concrete understanding, is the implications of once a person has it, that their smoking status is looking like it's playing a very big role on how serious the consequences will be for people who get the disease. A study that was just put out in a Chinese medical journal had showed that the odds ratio of a smoker having serious consequences from what they were deeming to be called COVID-19 pneumonia, the odds ratio of serious implications of people progressing into more serious conditions or possibly dying, the odds ratio for smokers were 14 times greater than for people who didn't smoke, meaning they had a 14 times greater risk if they were smokers of developing this serious condition that could lead to, again, more life-threatening consequences or possibly killing of these people. And that was even greater than the age variable. They were looking at different variables that could be increasing the person's risk of serious complications. And the age of the person had a 8 times odds ratio. Smoking was 14 times, and all the others were, again, lower than the age ratios even. So the best thing a person can do, and again, there's hopefully people who've seen my channel before and have been utilizing my material, they don't smoke. And if that's the case, that's great, because that is the one step that you could take that's probably the most concrete right now to reduce your risk of the serious implications of once you do get that disease. And again, it may be very well, we'll find out that by being a smoker, you have a better chance of getting that disease. Not just because it's that disease, but because of most diseases that are infectious. I have materials addressing this. I have a few addressing why smokers are more likely to get colds and flus, and also about why conditions that have nothing to do with smoking. Nothing to do with smoking. If a person gets them and they're smokers, they have a much higher risk of having serious complications or even dying because of these conditions. So I'm going to attach a lot of resources onto this page and address it from that particular angle. One other concept I want to address for people who find my videos is addressing the concept that many people have, especially if they're at quit smoking sites where they hear that there's this thing called a quitter's flu. And how this term is used is when people feel like they're getting the flu or they're sick after they quit smoking. And maybe not even just like the day or after they quit smoking, but sometimes they'll say it weeks after they quit smoking, months after they quit smoking. Sometimes they'll say it for a year after they quit smoking, that, oh, they just have a quitter's flu. This is a very dangerous concept under normal times, which is why I try to release material on this every single year. But we are no longer in normal times with this particular virus. Nobody who's off smoking for, again, a week should be thinking that if they're having flu-like symptoms, it's because they quit smoking a week ago. And one of the things I cover in the video that addresses this issue is if there's ever a fever, I don't care if it's the hour after you quit smoking. Once you have a fever involved, this is not the non-existent condition called quitter's flu. If you have a fever, you have an infection, and you not need to be treating it now with the advice that you would be getting if you had a fever and an infection. You shouldn't be going out and just thinking like, oh, it's totally safe, I just have a withdrawal from quitting smoking. Fevers are never going to be a sign of withdrawal. Anyway, I'm going to attach a lot of material into the resource page here that will cover different topics involving how smokers are at greater risks of getting problems, how smokers are at greater risk of complications if they do get problems. And it's not going to prevent everything by not smoking, but it's going to reduce your risk of something and many things that can literally down the line cost you your life. All you need to do, and it's simpler than even just washing your hands a lot. It's simpler than avoiding public places. All you need to do to really reduce your risk of serious complications of not only this, but lots of conditions and lots of problems is simply to finally make and stick to a personal commitment to never take another puff.